公民总主笔。
Welcome to Residence Messenger on Taipei Broadcasting Station. I'm your host, Ross Darrell Feingold. Our guest today is Jay Lin Zhijie from Gago Ulala and Portico Media. Jay, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ross. Hello, everybody. My name is Jay.
Before we talk about your career in media and Gago Ulala and Portico Media, let's discuss a bit about your background. Which part of Taiwan is home for you and your family?
I was born in Kaohsiung, Taiwan, which is a southern part of Taiwan. I lived in Kaohsiung until I was around the age of 9 and 10 before moving to a very small town in Northern California called Davis.
Oh, Northern California, that's a lot different, especially the small towns in Northern California. That's a lot different than a lot of people have the stereotype of, especially Southern California, LA, the beaches, the big cities, right? Northern California, that's kind of like rural America. Almost.
Well, actually, Davis is pretty close to the capital of California, which is Sacramento, that maybe not a lot of people here in Taiwan know about. But Davis in itself is definitely different than Kaohsiung. Davis, when I moved there in 1983, 84, people know Davis to be a college town. I mean, maybe some of your guests have heard of University of California at Davis, but it is kind of like a rural town. When I was biking around growing up in Davis, there are a lot of like cornfields and a lot of cows, and one of the funny jokes that people say if you tell people you're from Davis is like, oh, did you go cow tipping last weekend?
Well, did you go cow tipping, Jay?
No, I don't think anyone did.
Jay, when you were in Kaohsiung and then when you moved to California at a young age, what did you want to be when you grew up? I mean, did that change? Did you want to be something when you were in Kaohsiung, but then you got to Davis and suddenly you had a different view of what you wanted to be when you grew up?
I think when we were all young, we were aspiring to be, like the sky's the limit, the president, astronauts, the best basketball player in the world. So I kind of had that list of things I wanted to achieve. But as I got older, then you realize there are certain capabilities and limitations with achieving those impossible dreams. And eventually, of course, going to college, you start finding a discipline or a field of study that is suitable for your interest and your abilities.
Yeah, that was a very diplomatic answer. I couldn't really get it out of you. You wanted to be something specific, like, but you said save the world. That's a little bit broad,
A good son.
But the reason why, that's very, xiaoshun of you. But the reason why I asked is now you're a media industry executive and you've created media companies. When people are growing up, they don't say to themselves, I want to be the next, I'm trying to think of a Hollywood person who's not in trouble. I don't want to compare you to Harvey Weinstein.
Ryan Murphy would be a good example.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay.
Or if you compare you to Iger from Disney, so they're not popular right now either because their involvement with production in China. But people don't think about some people want to be an actor, but people don't think I'm going to be a media executive when when they're growing up. Did you love the media when you were a child? I mean, were you into the movies or video games or something like that?
Actually, when I was in college, my goal and my aspiration was to be like an industry planner for the government because in college I studied international relations and I found it quite interesting to be able to be effective on a planning point of view on planning the economic development or cultural development of a country. So that sounds a little bit dry, but that is in fact what I had aspired to be when I was in college.
Well, I guess it's not a surprise since you went to Berkeley, and Berkeley is kind of known as a bit of a liberal university, and the students are known for actually, like you said before, maybe they do want to change the world, I guess. Was that the university experience you were looking for? You wanted to be in at a school where it's known for activism and known for interest in various kinds of causes, social issues. I mean, look, Berkeley is known for that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to go to Berkeley just because simply it was then and still is the best public higher education institution in the United States, or one of the best. So I was lucky to be a part of Berkeley and call myself a bear. But it is a very liberal environment. In fact, during my fourth year in college, I lived next to the Naked Man. So I don't know if the people who are listening have ever heard of the Naked Man, but it was a guy who was walking around campus just strapped with a little bandana around his waist. And he would go to classrooms, he would walk around campus kind of like that, just with his backpack, and people just didn't even to be phased out by it.
That's kind of normal at Berkeley. Not to scare any parents who are listening who want their children to go, like you said, to a great public university in
it's a
the
big
United States.
And it's a big university with many different disciplines and many different departments. So even though I said I was in international relations, I was able to take courses from various different departments, including sociology, foreign languages, political science, economics. So it gave me a very wide exposure to schools of thought.
When you got to Berkeley, what was the environment, acceptance for sexual minorities already better than it had been in years before? Or how did it compare to your high school experience or even earlier when you were still in Taiwan? Now, looking back.
Well, in high school, I wasn't out at all. I was quite closeted. I tried my best because I was already a racial minority. And when I started discovering that I was gay during middle school, of course, like many people, they try to suppress that and try and fit in as much as they can. Even the first couple of years in college, I wasn't very out. It was only until after I completed my study year abroad in Germany that I came back hoping to, kind of put aside all the closets that I have been hiding in and come out to be a more authentic gay person. And that was a great place to come out in Berkeley because there are various organizations and support groups and obviously places that you can go to by driving across the Bay Bridge to San Francisco, to Oakland, for example, to connect with the community, the LGBT community. Yeah.
And afterwards, you went to law school. As a lawyer myself, I could sympathize with going to law school and then switching career paths. What is something you actually liked about studying law or during the time that you did work as a lawyer before you did switch paths?
I never intended to be a long-term sort of practitioner of law. I knew going to law school that it was a training that I can't get on my own. For example, as entrepreneur, I mean, when you dive in and start your business, you're constantly dealing with HR or management or accounting. But how do you learn criminal procedures or constitutional law or a lot of the business laws, corporate finance on your own? It's quite difficult. And so I went to law school with the hopes that I can gain as much legal knowledge as possible to prepare me for one day when I dive into doing business or media. And so during the last couple of years in law school, I was actually, to be honest, I wasn't spending a lot of my time in the classrooms. I was actually out there helping independent filmmakers fundraise or, participating in film festivals in the Bay Area and overseas.
Yeah. Speaking of film festivals, in 2014, you started the Taiwan International Queer Film Festival at TIQFF. Why? Why did you create this in 2014?
So 2014 was around the 10-year sort of like decade that I had been back in Taiwan and that I had been running Portico Media. Business itself was starting to be more stable. And I was realizing that I was itching to do something more to give back to the community. As a media specialist, I felt that doing a film festival, which doesn't involve, 365 days out of the year, that I could create a special event by coalescing the LGBT community with media, and in this particular case, LGBT movies from around the world, and use that as an opportunity to test the market and also to showcase to the community as well as the mainstream audience, but specifically to the media industry, that LGBT content would be a viable option for them to program into their TV channels or for them to invest in as content that could do well in this local market as well as overseas.
What were some of the challenges you encountered with launching the film festival? Because look, there already were existing film festivals in Taiwan, in Taipei. There was, of course, the Film Awards, which also attracts a lot of attention in the Mandarin film industry, at least. What were the challenges?
I think there were some internal challenges and there's some external. Internal challenges were coming to the turning point where I knew I needed to be completely out in all aspects, including out to my parents. To be honest, even though I started coming out, like I mentioned earlier, in college, I didn't fully and directly come out to my parents. So one of the biggest challenges was to come out with my parents in regards to my sexuality and sexual orientation, in hopes that they would be proud of me and be supportive of doing something so public and LGBT such as the film festival. And it turned out that they were so surprised that if I were gay, that I had delayed so long to tell them the truth. And so the film festival actually brought us closer together. The external was finding enough colleagues to take on additional work to put on a film festival as part of their workload, to take on additional work to make this happen. But fortunately, a lot of the colleagues at that time when we were launching the film festival were more than happy to contribute their efforts to creating the first queer film festival in Taiwan.
What about other stakeholders such as government agencies, corporate world, media coverage of the film festival? What was the reaction when you first began to discuss with them plans to have a LGBT-focused film festival?
Well, in terms of corporate sponsors, for the first year, the one and only was Political Media. And to be kind of like a pioneer, we needed to show that we're willing to put our foot forward and to use our financial resources to make it happen. Instead of waiting for other people to chip in, we needed to be the first starter on that. In terms of government, we were able to get some funding from local as well as central government. Not a lot, but enough for us to feel warm with their commitment to something that we're trying to do. And the community was very well received the film festival quite positively by not just turning out for our events, but actually buying tickets to see the screenings. And in our first year, we did the festival not just in Taipei, but we went above and beyond and had it in 2 cities, which is in Taipei and also in my original hometown of Kaohsiung.
Yeah. For those who are not familiar with LGBT-focused film, is there a particular genre within LGBT film that attracts audiences? Does the audience want to see movies about business executives who are gay? Do they want to see the kind of really the coming out kind of story, the family tension kind of story? They wanted to see movies about gay people raising a family. What's the kind of movie that really is popular with audiences?
I think in general, and it goes across the board, whether it's mainstream movies or LGBT movies, people want to be moved and inspired by a story that they can relate with. Maybe it's something with their own past or maybe their own aspirations or something that they wish they could do. So that's kind of like a general statement. It's not necessarily a particular genre, but making people be able to relate. And when we were doing the film festival, a lot of people had not seen a lot of the films that we were bringing to Taiwan. So for them, it was like a first-time exposure to seeing, movies of characters who are LGBT from other parts of the world that somehow still connected with them in terms of their own internal struggle of coming out or against discrimination or just coming of age. But in general, I would say people in Taiwan are quite interested in movies that are, a little bit light-natured instead of very, serious dramas, very with heavy subject matter. Sometimes people just want to relax. And I think a topic that is getting more and more traction for people in Taiwan, whether it's LGBT or mainstream, is the visibility and representation of gays as parents and actually raising families, because obviously Taiwan recently passed marriage equality and there are more and more gays who are getting married and finding different ways to create their own sort of own families. Yeah.
You also helped create the Asia Pacific Queer Film Festival Alliance. Which places in Asia benefited most from such an alliance? Or to ask that another way, which big cities, capitals around Asia really needed the help to have a network of film festivals so that they might be able to have one locally in their cities?
I think there's not really like one city or one country that benefited more than the other. I think it's a true equal network where we were able to share films and resources and contacts with each other to allow the programmer or the executive director of the film festival, whether it's from a developing nation or whether it's from a country that's holding its 25th LGBTQ film festival, additional extension into filmmakers that they otherwise might not have had access to. So there isn't really one city or country that benefited, and that continues to be the model for the operation of APQFFA.
Of course, here in Asia, there's still some countries with very strict laws. Do you think we're going to see a film festival in some of those countries soon? You know, I'm thinking of a place like Brunei. I mean, what's the likelihood of having a LGBT film festival there?
Hopefully they could be streaming our movies on Gaga Ooh La La, because I think in the very near future, it's probably not the safest thing to be holding physical screenings of LGBT movies in places such as Brunei and Indonesia. In fact, one of the original sort of like co-founders of APQFFA was a executive director of a queer film festival from Indonesia. And subsequently, over the years, that film festival had to go undercover and kind of be shut down just because of how severe the situation has gotten for the LGBT community in Indonesia as a whole. Yeah.
What about with COVID-19? What's been the effect on LGBT-focused film festivals around Asia?
I think film festivals around the world in general were affected by COVID in a sense that, you know, a lot of people were in lockdowns and in quarantines and there's no public gatherings. So a lot of film festivals, from the big ones such as Cannes or Berlin to the small ones such as, you know, the small community-based queer film festivals, had to be shut down and postponed or go completely online. But some of the online initiatives from some of the film festivals had the added benefit of being able to connect beyond kind of their home country and bring in supporters as well as viewers from other parts of the world. So it, in a sense, it's very unfortunate that these anchor events that bring the community actually together face-to-face had to be canceled. But it's positive in a sense that it kind of allowed us to be more creatively finding ways to connect with kind of like the global or more regional fans or purveyors of films or supporters of film festivals.
You mentioned a few minutes ago Taiwan's marriage equality law, which was passed a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So now we're a few years down the road.
Yeah.
Give us an overview of how or what issues still need to be addressed, you know, from the perspective of LGBTQ community in Taiwan. You know, give us a status report.
I mean, discrimination is not something that goes away once, you know, legislation is put in force.
In fact, the name of the legislation, some would say, is discriminatory by itself because it's called basically the special law.
Yeah.
And it was not incorporated into the civil code.
But that's already a huge step from anywhere else in Asia. And I think what we are trying to do now, I say broadly as the LGBT community and straight allies, is to make some of the special law or the provisional laws failure before to provide greater equality, to take that one step, incremental step. For example, allowing transnational couples to be able to marry regardless what the nationality of the foreign partner.
Yeah, just take a step back on that issue. As I understand it, if the foreign partner comes from a country where there is not marriage equality, then the Taiwan partner cannot marry that foreign partner here in Taiwan.
Yes.
You know, what was the logic behind that?
Well,
you're a lawyer, so
yeah.
From the legislative drafting perspective, what was the logic behind that?
Well, I think the legislator or the sort of like constitutional court did not wanted to get sufficient protection passed, but still not rile the boat too much, but allow legislative procedures or sort of like constitutional court challenges to be to catch up, because there were aside from the sort of constitutional provisional law, there were 3 referendums that were quite negative toward the LGBT community. So my thinking is that they tried to find a balance where there was sufficient protection, but not entirely the full protection. As you mentioned, it was a provisional law instead of amending the civil code. But I think the community itself is now taking on those additional imperfections of what was passed and trying to get as much protection as possible.
What about family issues and surrogacy issues for gay couples? Where do things stand on that in Taiwan?
Yeah, and unfortunately, if a gay couple were to adopt a child, neither of whom have blood relations with that child, the spouse, that is not the original sort of adopting parent, will never have a chance, and even as a married couple, to adopt that child legally, unless they divorce. So that is, I think, something additional that the LGBT community and a lot of the legal experts are trying to challenge as well. The other thing is surrogacy. Right now, for most people to become a father or mother, you need to actually complete a lot of the IVF or surrogacy procedures overseas. It is not something that is going to be corrected overnight because surrogacy is predominantly done also by straight couples, but these are legal as well as other additional challenges for gay couples who want to have a child. I mean, this issue goes beyond just kind of like the legal limitations, but these are kind of like the challenges that are kind of like the core focus for the LGBT community.
And is there just a lack of interest at present by legislators to do something about this? They say we have other priorities. We don't want to revisit these issues right now.
Yeah, surrogacy is quite a controversial topic, right? And involves in asking a stranger, in a sense, to carry your child. And aside from sort of like LGBT issues, there's feminist rights concerns as well, on top of whether Taiwan is ready to actually legalize such practices for people. So it's still a long road ahead. I think right now for LGBT couples who want to create families, they're in the very short term, surrogacy will still continue to be something that needs to be completed overseas instead of something that can be done in Taiwan.
We'll take a short break, and after that we'll come back and continue our chat about media and LGBT content with Jay Lin of Portico Media and Gaga Ulala. You're listening to Residence Messenger on Taipei Broadcasting Station. Welcome back to Residence Messenger on Taipei Broadcasting Station. Our guest today is Lin Zhijie, Jay Lin of Gaga Ulala and Portico Media. Jay, tell us a bit about Portico Media.
Portico Media is a company that I started when I returned to Taiwan back in 2014, 2015. Initially started as an animation studio, but we pivoted to becoming one of Taiwan's major content and TV channel aggregators by bringing foreign channels from media partners such as NBCU, Comcast, Viacom, A&E. And over the years, that's become a pretty stable part of the business, and providing these channels to the various digital cable operators as well as IPTV operators like MLD, CNS, Cabro. And then, as we had talked earlier, in 2017, I started Gaga Ulala, which is an LGBT movie streaming service. You can think of it as a gay Netflix.
So if people are really angry that a foreign network is not being carried on Taiwan television, on the digital platforms, or there was a channel that was being carried but it disappeared, you're the guy to call. They could call you up and say, Jay, how come I can't see this TV? You know, I moved here from the U.S. or from Europe or Hong Kong or Singapore. Why isn't this station being carried in Taiwan? They could call you and complain.
Complain? I mean, I think we're definitely doing our part already by bringing foreign channels and content into Taiwan. So we're trying to do our best. But there are certain realities and limitations with linear TV, right? Because a lot of people are more and more are used to watching content on a VOD, video on demand basis on their mobile phone or on their computers or on their tablets, and not so much relying on linear streaming or linear TV channels.
So when you say reality
TV.
is also an important factor here is if somebody is mad that they can't get or see a particular network on TV in Taiwan, there's just not money to be made, right? And that's why it's not being broadcast.
Yeah, I mean, definitely it's an issue that's happening globally called cord cutting, right? So these cable operators or IPTV operators are losing more customers and subscribers. And as a consequence, they're able to pay TV channels less money. And it becomes to a tipping point where some of the channel operators decide to just shut down their channel operations, for example, like in the Asia region. So over the years, we've had, unfortunately, several TV channels which have shut down from on a regional level from our media partners, such as, I don't know if the audiences might be familiar, such as with channels such as like Sci-Fi or Diva or Universal or E. I mean, those are all channels that were previously seen in hundreds of households in Taiwan who are now completely disappeared. Not just in Taiwan, but around the whole Asia region.
Just in the last few years, some channels I watch, not because I particularly like this network, but just to get some different voices. Fox News disappeared from Taiwan. A bit controversial, Fox News, but if you want to see the alternative perspective that they presented on the news, what happened with my baseball games, Jay? You know, so I get to watch baseball from America on a particular network, and at the end of last year, that network suddenly disappeared from TV as well.
Well, and partially because, a lot of the sporting events were canceled because of COVID. So that contributes to also harming the bottom line for a lot of these sports channels. On top of that, a lot of sports franchises are rolling out their own sort of like dedicated subscription service. So that's also another reason why it's becoming increasingly harder to operate channels, especially sports.
Yeah, I mean, it was great because it was just one channel,
Yeah.
on the package, whether with MOD or K-Bro. And now, if you want to watch baseball from America, if you watch
Right.
American baseball, you're kind of left with, especially if you live overseas,
Right.
you're left with subscribing to one of the streaming packages, which
Right.
costs a bit more money than my monthly MOD subscription.
Yeah, I mean, you cut the cord for your IPTV or your cable service, but you end up actually paying more for the aggregate of the various subscriptions that you're paying for streaming, whether it's for sports streaming or it's for movie streaming or for whatever kind of streaming that you're into. The aggregate monthly fee that you're paying has actually increased over time. But of course, you're getting infinitely more options and content on your own fingertips, right? You decide when you want to watch something and where you want to watch it. So there's a price that has to be paid for that additional bountiful of content as well as for the convenience.
You mentioned people's fingertips and the bountiful content, and obviously the platforms have evolved significantly in recent years. What's the future, if you had to predict? Where are we going to be watching, or how are we going to be watching? How are we going to be paying for what we watch in the years to come?
I think online streaming will definitely continue. And I think there are going to be maybe a few streaming services that will get bigger and stronger and more robust, such as the Netflix or the Amazon, the Hulu. And they're going to have a lot of global power because they are acquiring and then producing for the whole global world. So it's definitely going to squeeze out some local streaming players. So we're going to see some changes into the players who are involved in this game. But I think another trend that I see happening is with streaming, more and more people are looking at the ability to create local stories and creating these local original productions that previously you could only sell to, for example, your local broadcaster or your local platform. But now there's an opportunity for global streamer to commission it, or for you to license that to various overseas streaming services that can allow that content to be seen by a lot more people than previously before, kind of like the streaming revolution.
Now, Gaga Ulala is the one and only LGBTQ focused online subscription video on demand service here in Asia. What was the market opportunity that you saw that led you to create the service?
I think the opportunity or the market that I saw started happening when I was doing the film festival, because I realized there were people in Taiwan who wanted to see these movies but who couldn't make it to art screenings or make it to the cinemas, especially people who lived outside of the major cities. I also noticed that there were a lot of people in other parts of Asia that had expressed desire and interest to see these movies, but they were in Thailand or Philippines or Brunei, as you have mentioned. So we definitely saw the market that was there. It's niche in, they forecast that the LGBT percentage of the total population is around 5 to 10%. So definitely there's need spread across many different markets, many different countries. And definitely the supply was there because we were receiving hundreds of submissions of films and features, shorts, documentaries from around the world. So if we could build this platform and bring these films on board that were otherwise not getting distributed in these local markets, and be able to provide in a digital way to consumers who are clamoring for this, who are not able to get this in their traditional media outlets, whether it's in the cinemas or in the TV or even on their sort of like digital, the websites in their various countries. And this presented an opportunity that we should pursue. And also it would be bringing diversity in a very direct way to the makeup of content into these countries that we're penetrating and entering.
Why base it in Taipei as opposed to other locations? What makes Taipei an ideal location to base this business?
Where else would a better location be other than in Taipei, Taiwan? I mean, I think we're very progressive in terms of our attitude and acceptance for LGBT. We are very familiar with the cultures of Japan, the U.S., and other parts of the world. It's a very fluid sort of media culture and media environment and an ecosystem. And also, I'm based here, and I felt that there probably is nowhere else in Asia that would have allowed Gaga Ula to foster. Another important sort of role that, and the role of government is very important. So over the years, we've had a lot of support from the various governmental agencies, whether it's financial support or moral support or marketing support, to roll our service to people in Taiwan as well as overseas. So for all those reasons, Taiwan is bar none the best place for the birth of LGBT streaming service such as Gaga Ulala.
And why a subscription model? Or is there other kinds of models like a pay-on-demand model that you had considered? Why subscription?
I think pay-on-demand probably would have been very difficult because these are very niche content that we're bringing in. And so it'd probably be doing a lot of work to set up these pay portals for individual movies without being able to monetize from them. And I think an AVOD model was not something that we believe in the short term would be profitable or even viable because of the streaming cost of content online. And so an SVOD service that we would continuously build on top of that library was deemed the best choice and kind of like the only choice that we had to start this streaming platform.
And you've had rapid growth. I trust, though, that's not only due to COVID-19 and people being locked up in their homes in some cities around Asia, obviously not here in Taiwan. What do you think are the main drivers of the rapid growth?
Well, one thing is that we became a global service in May of 2020. So whereas before we were only available in Southeast Asia and South Asia, now it's available globally. And we do see pickup in markets such as North America and the US and Canada and the English-speaking countries. And I think people who are living in other parts outside of Asia are very curious, whether they are, from the Asian diaspora or they're or the LGBT community there who are looking for diversity in terms of stories and characters, let's say, featuring more Asian characters. They are finally able to find a place where they can do a lot of that discovery. So and also another trend that is happening is that there's a lot of straight women who are watching gay soap dramas, and the term for that is called BL. And it's kind of like an interesting way that we are becoming more and more mainstream, is that we're bringing straight women who are coming to our platform to watch these BL series.
How do you know this? Did you collect data on your customers and they tell you that they're straight women, but they're really interested in these dramas?
Well, there's some big data that we can analyze from our sort of back end to know. And it is an inevitable trend. It's not just on our service, but it's kind of like a global phenomenon.
And what's stopping straight men from having the same interest that straight women do?
I don't know. I should ask more, like what their thoughts are and how we can, provide the service more meaningful and more entertaining for them.
What's the next parts of the world that you hope to enter after Asia and North America?
I think we're available globally now, except for China. Mm-hmm. And so right now, in terms of we're not focusing on trying to penetrate or open up into more markets, but to find meaningful original content productions that could attract subscribers and allow us to keep subscribers. For us right now, that is kind of like the main objective for 2021.
And where does most of the content come from as far as these stories? You mentioned that a lot of Asians in the diaspora want to watch it, but is it movies? Are there a lot of movies or more movies about people in Japan or Korea or Taiwan or other parts of Asia? When people watch the movies or the other types of dramas, what are they watching? They're watching stories about people in which countries typically?
I think the breakdown is roughly 70% Asian LGBT stories versus 30% from other parts of the world. And the male-female makeup of our subscriber base is actually around 60% men and 40% women. But of course, that shifts with, the new titles that we have in the week, or the sort of like batch of new content that we're bringing in that may be skewing more to Asians or more from festival flavors from overseas, or appealing and catering at that particular moment to a BL audience. So it varies over time, but that's kind of generally the demographic sort of makeup of our subscriber base.
And as the company grows rapidly, what do you need most internally? Right? Do you need more people to evaluate content to put on the platform? Or you just need more people, more on the financial side? From a talent acquisition perspective, what are you looking for, especially since you're based here in Taipei?
Need a lot of help on all levels. I think we need more people who are adept at doing digital marketing globally, communicating with influencers or media, in various parts of the world, whether it's Europe, North America, Australia, Latin America. So definitely we need more manpower on that. I think we need more knowledgeable producers and scriptwriters who are able to create and produce stories that have relevance in the markets that we're trying to penetrate, let's say if it's Latin America or where have you, and to be able to work with, and I don't think those talents necessarily need to be based here in Taiwan, but we need to find those people, be able to sort of have communications and develop projects with them that have meaning in as wide of a audience base as possible. And of course, financial. I mean, it's quite a endeavor to maintain this platform, to invest in originals, to license this content. But we're taking a pretty measured approach. We're not, betting it all on one original title or burning our money in 1 year's time. So it's a lot of wanting to be ambitious, but also be constrained in and realistic in terms of our growth and profitability. So it's a long-term game.
And after COVID-19, it sounds like you're going to have to spend a lot of time on the road, to achieve all the things that you just mentioned, whether it's meeting producers and sourcing new content or doing the marketing, talking to media around the world. Do you anticipate you're going to have to be traveling globally to promote the service?
Well, hopefully there are other people who will be able to take the baton and run with it, because I've been flying around for so many years, right? And I hope to foster the next batch of producers and negotiators who will be able to do this other than myself. I don't know if it's because of the COVID situation, but I've become more averse to flying, not for like just health or like public health reasons, but I now have 2 kids who are 5, and I feel like I need to be more grounded in Taiwan so that I can spend more significant time with them and give those opportunities to like the fresh generation to go out there and make the connections and create the stories that will make impact.
You also do various kinds of public events. You are participating in Creativity Week here in Taipei. What's a good way for people to learn more about you, find out your next public speaking event?
I think maybe via my LinkedIn or my Instagram, but I have to honestly say I haven't been as active on social media for the past several months, but just checking out, I think Gaga Ulala's Twitter or Facebook fan pages would be a good way to know what we're doing overall as a streaming platform. And generally, I'm kind of like the guy out there who is kind of like the evangelist for this platform. So if there's something that's related to Gaga Ula, you'll probably be able to see me.
And can you give us some recommendations for something that's not on the platform yet? Maybe a sneak preview of something that's going to be on the platform soon that maybe the audience might want to tune into or sign up for so they could see it?
So we're launching this month, end of this month, a anthology of 10 stories that with 10 directors, 10 songs, 10 MVs, and 10 social media initiatives under the title of Queer Up the Volume. And it's a hope to combine storytelling with Mando pop, and hopefully that combination will create intrigue and interest for people who are in Taiwan as well as overseas. And end of this month, on April 23rd, we're launching one of the titles called Papa and Daddy. So it's kind of loosely based on my own life and experience as a gay dad. It's played by 2 terrific actors, Xie Jiajian and Ning Hui Huang. And it's the first Asian gay family comedy series. So I would recommend everybody to tune in on that on April 23rd.
Do you make a cameo appearance?
I did make a cameo appearance. I kind of regret that cameo appearance now because I just look so much older and less handsome than our 2 key protagonists, the 2 main characters. But I'm very happy to have participated and gave birth, literally, to this project so that we can encourage through storytelling more people to consider what are the challenges and what are the sweet moments of raising a family as a gay couple in Taiwan and in Asia.
Yeah. Before we go, and you mentioned people could go to the Twitter and check out more information about the service. For the people who are not so technical, what's the best equipment that you recommend for watching a good streaming service like Gaga Ulala?
Oh, just with your app. Whether you're on iOS or Android, just go to the Android store or the Google store or the App Store, or even just on your browser and just type in Gaga Ulala.
Now, Jay, I thought you were going to say you need to have like a 65-inch, wonderful home TV. But in all seriousness, you're very comfortable telling potential subscribers, watch it on your phones.
Yes, of course. A lot of content that we have on our platform are short form based, so it's very suitable for you to watch on your phone and on the go.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Our guest today has been Lin Zhijie, Jay Lin of Portico Media, and Gaga Ulala. Thank you so much, Jay, for coming on the show.
Thank you, Ross. It was great talking to you.
You've been listening to Residence Messenger on Taipei Broadcasting Station.